Sarah, Scarlata.
Hey Roy, how you doing?
I'm doing great now. I'm so happy to meet you again.
Like,
Um, I told you we had a little bit of a technical difficulty in the PMC, but I feel like I'm lucky to get to be in the room with you again, virtually, which is I don't know. I just feel like it's a blessing, to be honest.
oh, that's
I
thank you.
told you my opinion was when I saw you in the panel. I was like, that's a cool person. I want to have her on the podcast. I like that person. Like I immediately liked something about you, and it confirmed itself when we actually met in person. And yeah, so let's tell the listeners about you, your background, what you've been up to, and how you came to this point, doing what you do in APM,
Oh yeah,
and
sure. No, that's very
doing
nice of you to say. The PMC was awesome. It was one of those things where it was such a blur and it was so busy, but it was good. It was like just an overload of good stuff, you know. But it is nice to see you again in a little less crazed environment, I guess, you
yeah,
know, in
yeah.
our respective homes. Yeah, so I mean, I've had a few different careers already. I started off playing in bars when I was 16 as a drummer, and I grew up on the East Coast, and I'd play bars, and I was always in bands with people older than me, like twice my age. But then I got into Berklee College of Music, and I studied drum set performance. And Berkeley is such a great program. You just learn a little bit of everything. Even though as a performance major, I learned about all kinds of great stuff, and it really expanded my horizons. And I found a band that I joined. I moved to California. I toured around in bands with mostly the same people for about 10 years. And I moved to LA. One of those bands was one of those almost made it bands, and we were managed by Owen Husney, who discovered Prince. So he had us move down to LA. He was great. Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of like meeting with all the big labels and the bidding wars and all that stuff, and then it fell apart. but but
Hmm.
that was one of those things. It was like a crossroads, where I could have, I don't know. I could have done a lot of different things, but one of the things I ended up doing was just getting to work. And I learned, I just wanted to expand my horizons. And lucky for me, I ended up working in the production music business. My first job was at Five Alarm Music. I
Hmm.
actually worked for the company that owned Five Alarm for a while, and I got to, meet music supervisors and figure out that this is really cool. Like this
Hmm.
whole like music synchronization thing is, telling stories with music is the best. So I'm like, this really does appeal to me. And how about I see where this takes me? So I did that, and yeah, I've been in the business since about 2006, and I've moved around a little bit. I've been at APM Music for 6 years, and I have a dual role there where I'm a music director and I work on the marketing department. So my job is essentially twofold. One of the things I do is I pitch music to clients, which I love doing. It's always like a big puzzle to solve. And the other thing I do is I promote the catalog. So anything that's, you know, we have so much historic material and new stuff coming in. There's so much to talk about. So I work on our blog articles, our email marketing campaigns, and also our playlists, to make sure that clients can find what they need quickly. So that's what I've been doing at APM, and it's been great. And it's a great place to work. And your
Hmm.
music's in there too, so that makes it even better.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. Something really came through actually after we did the podcast last time. We will get into the story because I feel like so this time you gave us a bit of a rundown of the story, but I'll go into specifics because that's what I love doing.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like before we go into all that, I feel like your passion to music is something that comes across immediately. Like when I spoke to you face to face, I could see that you have that curiosity about music. And I think that you touched on a really important point here is that you are looking to, first of all, solve a puzzle for clients, help them do that. Uh, Plus, you help to tell a story, which are both very playful things,
Hmm.
in a way. In a way, of course, there's a business in the end of that. But I wanna ask you, we'll get back to your story, but how do you feel like um how do you feel like you balance the business side and the play side?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's a good question. What's awesome, people like music supervisors and the people that work really hands on these productions are very like minded to composers and people like us that make music too. And
Mm,
a lot of them are musicians. So I always feel like a kinship with those folks. Like when I go into meetings, it's never stiff or uncomfortable. It's always like we find common ground, quickly with
yeah.
music that we like, even if it's stuff that they need help with or not. I mean, we'll just talk about music, and it's like so that to me is like you have to it can't be all like button up, because if it's too button up, I think you turn people off, because everyone that works in this business has an artistic heart and are artists a lot of times themselves, right? So I
Mm,
think it's important to not shut that off, right? To like kind of implement that into what you do.
yeah.
In terms of stuff after hours, like playing drums and things, it's like I find that very meditative, if nothing else. I mean, even if I'm not playing huge stadiums or anything like that right now, I still enjoy playing, and I still play in my house. And, for me, it's just all about a balance, right? And
Mm,
I don't know. And like, just like listening to what other people are creating is just a gift. I mean, think about it that way. It's like anything that's on our site, I know took so many hours and so much creativity from somebody. It's like you can't really overlook that. And I think that everyone who makes music has a little bit of that play thing that you're talking about too,
mm.
So it's nice to kind of, I mean, we're lucky that we work in a business where we have that freedom to do that, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, it's huge, and it's amazing though for me to see people who are higher ups who I expect for them to in a lot of, just again, it's just where I come from, but I expect people to kind of be a little bit like been there done that, which there is, like there definitely is. You go to PMC and I could see that in people at times
Oh
where they're
yeah.
like, yeah, music, like, yeah, it's what
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
um that being said, there's also always the people like you, which apparently aren't anomalies, but I feel like it's a it's an act. You need to find these people, and they don't exist everywhere, but when you meet them, you start attracting them. That's what I feel like anyway with myself. That's my trajectory. But until that happened, I did have a lot of just very dry messages from labels or from people.
Right.
Until I found these people who are like you, who are like, oh, music is,
Mm-hmm.
there's people who are, which I'm included. I sin in that, going like, oh, music, you know. And there's people like you who go, oh, music, and that really fascinates me.
No, that's a good point. And I think that, people are, it's like they're too cool to be excited. And, I'll never be
Exactly.
too cool to be excited. I think
Exactly.
the minute you turn that off, you become boring. I don't know. Right. I mean, I'm not shy to express enthusiasm. And
Yeah.
of course, when you're in meetings with higher ups and like people are very powerful, like I always kind of measure what I put out there, make sure that I'm not turning anyone off or thinking that I'm not professional, so that's very
Mm,
important. But I think it's professional to know what you're talking about and being excited
mm,
about what you're talking about. I mean, don't you? I mean, if you're not excited about it, sometimes that tells me maybe they don't understand it. I don't know,
mm.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I I get excited about the things that I think are a little innovative and a little different, and just knowing the difference between one and the other.
Mm.
I don't know, but it
So
is interesting. It is a line, and
yeah.
it is. I think that the audience at the PMC, like when I was on that panel, that was the right audience to really be, more, my authentic self, where I really am just a music nerd, right? And I'll always
Yeah.
be a music nerd, but you just I usually don't dial it back too much, but there are times where it merits being dialed back if you're having a very, structured conversation with a music executive. You have to
Mm,
play the part, that you need to play, and know that you're going to be a good supplier to them. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
most of the time, it's not that way. Even with the executives, it's usually not that way. I'm happy to report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, in the end of the day, I feel like most of the people who are in this space have been at some point musicians, and that's
Yes.
important. Even the crew at your team, like everyone that I've met were musicians, like at some point. Even Edwina and John and all these amazing people on your team, which I told you, like I loved talking to anyone from your team because you guys are just such well. I mean, your intentions are so amazing to me. Like I can see, I can really sense when somebody has really like a real goodness in them, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel that from you guys immediately, and that's something special. That's something that I feel like composers should shoot to be in touch with, in
Mm-hmm.
themselves and in other people. The ability to be curious is something that, there are composers that make, they need to feed their family, so they make 300 tracks a year, and that's where it's at for them. And I've seen it, like I've seen it many times, where
Yeah.
people again aren't very very crazy curious and butterflies when they hear music. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say about our team. I mean, we have a an APM jam band. I don't know if you know that, but at
You
like
do?
yeah, we perform at like holiday parties, and we have a week where everyone flies in and we talk about the company and our direction. But yeah, I mean, so you talked about John, right, and Edwina. So John and I usually share the drum duties, right? Which is great because I only have to learn half the songs,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And Edwina plays piano,
Yeah.
and keyboards, and yeah, we had the whole team. I'd say the jam band usually consists of about 15 to 20 people
Yeah.
of our whole staff, and our staff's roughly 100, and it'd
Yeah.
probably be more, but there's people that work abroad, but it's kind of fun, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something that kind of came up when you were speaking about turning off people. What what do you guys in APM look for when you are working with I guess with your publishers, but also I know you don't work directly with composers, but what do you look for when you work, when you take on people, when you take on labels, when you take on, what is something that you like to take on, and what are things that turn you off, so to
Oh, that's
speak?
a good question. Yeah. So we have a catalog of about 1.2 million tracks. So one thing we would never want to do is have catalogs competing for the same sort of business, if you will. So
Mm,
what we try to do is, if we haven't been signing a lot of new catalogs, but when we are, ones that we have taken on fill a niche. So, for example, we're known for our archival catalogs. We have a great new catalog called Fadeaway Editions, which is basically, it's an archival music catalog. So all the stuff was recorded pre 1980,
wow.
and it all has vocals. And the label owner did a great job. He worked in music clearance. So what he did was he found real artists who had like really cool vinyl records that he had in his collection, and he sealed up the rights. He called them, made sure, saw if like the artists were up for being a part of his label, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of times they were. I mean, a lot of times these artists are, just folks that live across the country that, are maybe up in age, since it's an archival catalog, right? And they're jumping at the chance, like, this is wonderful, thank you, and they own the rights, and he does the deal, and then we get the music. So like that's an example of something that is like, it has a very specific purpose. It's archival music with vocals, right?
Mm,
We tend, the thing is, there's no such thing really as an all-purpose catalog that's new anymore. Like
mm,
we have KPM, which is legendary. It's been around
yeah.
forever. We have Bruton, another legendary catalog, right? So they already cover the whole gambit. A lot of times for publishers and catalogs, it's good to fill a niche and to have a lane, right? We have really great, like, for example, sports hip hop labels that we've signed because we need that. We have a lot of sports clients. And so we have, labels that are specific to that market, right?
Yeah.
So my whole advice would be to pick a lane and do it very well, and also
Yeah.
fill a need. Like someone like an APM, we have pretty much everything, right? But if there's something that's new and different that we don't have and you focus on it, that's great, you know?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's really that's really a big thing where Seth Godin says, "Be so good they can't ignore you." In a way,
Hmm.
he says it like that. But I feel deeply that, and it's been said again and again on the podcast, is that when you really shine somewhere, people just see it, they gravitate towards it, they sign it, they it's gonna make it somewhere. But I feel like there's also a lot of the money grab kind of pursuit, which is like just make a lot, just make a lot, and that will in the end feed you and your family or whatever. That's kind of the other the other side of it. I feel like since you've seen so many things in this industry, what do you feel like is a good balancing act for composers, for people who want to get in the industry as composers but also understand the business?
Um, yeah, I mean, so where would you start? Is that what you mean? Like where, like if someone wants to get started in the business?
Yeah, or just progress, or just be
Yeah,
like, or just be a force.
yeah. No, that's a good question. I'm constantly on tunefind.com.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar, but like,
Of course.
so not only, like, am I watching lots of, I like watching TV and movies and keeping current. And I have, Shazam on my phone. So if there's a song I don't recognize, I'm like, oh, this is a really cool sync, right? I'll see if I can pick it up on my Shazam. And if that doesn't pick it up, I'll go into tunefind.com. So being a little nerdy about it and really doing your homework and being like, wow, I've been noticing a trend that, these kinds of artists are getting lots of placements, or like this music is really like hitting across different shows and things that are really, getting a lot of traction. So I mean, just paying attention and really being a scholar as to what these tastemakers are choosing for these productions, I think is a
Mm,
good place to start and to always stay active on, and just basically be a fan of media and just really study it. Even like stuff that's on social media and TikTok and all the commercials you want to fast forward, like what's
yeah.
what's being placed in the commercials. There's some people that do that music very well, and the ad market is thriving. I don't know if you know this, but like, you know my Netflix account just reverted to ads.
Mm,
Ads are coming back. We're going
mm,
back to the old model of TV where there are commercials. You have to pay a lot of money to not have commercials now.
yes.
So if you're a composer, you might want to pay attention to the growing ad market, because that is a growing market. Unscripted is growing, true crime documentaries are growing, all these things are growing. So paying attention to trends like that, I think, is important too.
Mm. So just basically keeping your hand on the pulse, kind of keeping a finger on the pulse, and
Yeah.
being very be, okay. So let me share something. So for me, when I watch something, I get very immersed. So
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
don't necessarily I don't necessarily listen to, okay, what's playing. I just know when something sweeps me away, like when something just like takes me by storm. I just feel it. It's
Sure.
it's more so that than I want to research it at the moment. So how would you suggest, like, to somebody who's more emotional like that, to kind of to go in and do the research, like maybe
Yeah.
after, or what's maybe a
Yeah, so say you are a trailer composer. Maybe you could go onto YouTube and well, if you go into IMDb, you'll see all the top 10 grossing movies at any given moment. And if you click on any of them, you'll hear their trailers, right? So if you
mm,
say in that example, I would study it that way. I'm a trailer composer. These are the top grossing movies. I'm going to check out what kind of music they used in these trailers. Let's see if I can find any themes, if there's new sounds that I need to maybe invest in. Um, or if you're more of a, advertising composer, again, like check Adweek, or any of these publications, the online publications that show, the trending ads. And, I'm trying to think of the other one. It's not Adweek. It's, mm, the name's escaping me, but there's
mm,
different like online platforms where you can view like some of the most popular commercials, you know?
mm, mm.
And again, tune find for television. If you are like, say you like doing rom com music, I would look up all the rom coms and hit play on all the things that were in all the newest rom coms. So
Hmm.
I would go online. I would go find your platform and start doing some research that way.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful. Very, very powerful information. Last time when we were speaking, I'm gonna jump. It's a bit of a sharp turn that I'm taking here.
Okay.
Um, but last time that we were speaking, you spoke to you being mentored by older people, and I feel like that's important to kind of tell the people who listen to this about how it is. I mean, you came to be so curious, um, and I feel like it started very young for you when you were being basically that old soul that older people took under their wing, right? So if you could speak to that and to what do you think that you had that made these people take you under their wing?
Yeah, a lot of it was because I really respected the people that I was around, and I think being respectful will take you far. I mean, just knowing like, hey, um, what I, like if I'm on an email chain, for example, and it's like, wow, that deal that you just did is pretty amazing. Would you mind giving me more background on how we're working with such great people? Would you mind? And more often than not, they'll say yes, especially if you're at a place of business and you're working with people and they're your peers. I mean, I was just always asking questions in a very polite way and seeing whenever they had the time, and just knowing that I'm open. So I think that like having that openness and that respect for people, I think it takes you a far way. Also, like knowing when people are available to give you that information, and even other composers and musicians and things like that. Like again, not being shy to let them know I'm a fan of their work. You know,
Mhm.
again in a
Mm.
very respectful way, and like nerding out with them. Like I really loved, it reminded me of a Bernard Herrmann line that you did in this score. Would you mind telling me what your inspiration was? More often than not, people love to talk about that stuff, because they're
Mm.
often not asked, you know so
Mm.
the fact that if you're one of those people that has the knowledge and you're a real fan of it, I mean, asking those questions, if nothing else, shows the person that that there's a kinship there, that you guys have this in common, and and I would just be really, really nice about it. And if they were too busy, then cool, right on. I just want to let you know you did a good job, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
uh, lucky for me, I mean, I've been around people that were very giving of their time, you know,
Yeah.
and I feel pretty lucky for that. And that continues to be the case. It's like you're never too old, or no one knows it all. It doesn't matter how long
Yeah.
you've been in the business.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I feel like it's very interesting because there's in what you're saying, like being the nice person is kind of it gives the connotation of being somebody who's basically gonna get screwed at some point. But I feel like there's being nice that has grit, and I feel like that's what you're speaking to, where you would talk to somebody and you would show their interest and you wouldn't feel ashamed to ask very specific questions, which
Hmm.
I mean, which is very counterintuitive because people want to be asked these questions,
Hmm.
but um, people don't ask these questions to them because they idolize what they've done or whatnot. Like that's
Right.
why I feel like uh, um yeah, just in general, if you go up to a musician and you ask him, what did you do on that song, like what bass did you use or whatever, like I've
Hmm.
seen it happen in PMC where somebody from one of the agencies I work on, he listens to all the songs in the agency, and he asked this dude, somebody who was on a different panel, on this song, specific song, what preamp did you use or something like crazy, like very, very specific. And then they
Right.
started a beautiful conversation. But there
Hmm.
needs to be a little bit of that knowing that nerding out is something that people are actually looking to do. Like
Yes.
right now, we're kind of nerding out about the ins and outs of this space. Like and I feel like we're having a really a fun time, like juggling that, and that's how I get to learn about this industry. But I feel like there's a bit of grit to it. And I wanted to ask, do you feel like it's something that you've like it's just inherent to you? Were you always like a researcher? Or what? Where do you feel like this really came from?
Oh, yeah, it's funny when I was on when I was touring with those bands and in vans and stuff. I was my friend, one of my bandmates would call me the music encyclopedia. Whenever a song would
There
go
you
on, I'd
go.
be like, "Oh, this is from Steeler's Wheel," and did you know that he did that song? You know what I mean? Like I would go on about the
Amazing.
artist because I like finding the I used to read all the trade magazines like the Rolling Stones and the Spin
Wow.
magazines and the musician magazines, Modern Drummer, all that stuff. But like Jerry Rafferty, has that famous hit with the saxophone on it, Baker Street. But he was in Steeler's Wheel, and a lot of people don't know that. So I liked being dorky like that. And my bandmates would always be like, you're like the music encyclopedia. So I guess that's how my brain is wired, and I'm a
Mm,
drummer, so we're a little weird anyway.
mm,
I think, but no, I mean, I love music, and the thing with me too is when I was asking, my superiors or whatever, these questions, they always knew that I wasn't trying to get something out of them. It was
yeah,
never malicious,
yeah,
and people can smell that a mile away. But if you're true in your intent, where you're like, I really just want to know like what bass you use on that song, whatever. People
mm,
can usually suss that out and be like, oh, this is really cool. I'd love to talk about the bass I used or whatever.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference there because sometimes, uh, yeah, I mean, sometimes you feel it in somebody where they're really trying to get in there and they're trying to get it, ask for things that maybe I can't give them. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
happy to discuss things. You know what I mean? If especially if I have the time. Like at the
yeah.
PMC, it's like I enjoyed a lot of those conversations with people.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing that I feel like people don't understand about networking is that in the end of the day, people don't remember you for giving them your business card. They remember you for the conversation you've had, for the mutual things you have, for the
right.
interest that you've shown in them. They remember you for things that you would never guess. And a lot of people just go and shit on that in a way because they're just they come in too early with too much.
Yeah, they're impatient with it. It's a
Right.
long game.
Right.
And the thing is, every year at the PMC, it's the same people. There's going to
Right.
be new people, but it's always the same people. So, you know, you're going to see them again, you know?
Yeah.
So the people that go straight in for like, do you have a job for me? You're like, oh, sorry, and then it's hard to go from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
all the people that are in this business, I see the same people over and over and over. And then over the years, you get to know them. Like composers,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what you do. It's like I see familiar faces every year at the PMC, and I'm always happy to see them. So
Yeah.
it's like just being a part of this business and knowing that you're in it for the long haul. That's really important to know that, you're not going to get successful immediately. It's like, it's a matter of, like you were saying, networking. And that takes a long time, and you just have to be patient, and
Yeah.
believe in yourself.
I don't like the term networking much these days because I think it's been bastardized, but I do like the word connecting. And
Connecting.
I feel like that's that's been the biggest thing for me where it's my second year and I feel like even from last year to this year how I incrementally feel more confident and also calm in PMC and just like meeting people from last year but also opening myself to meeting new people
Hmm.
and creating new
Yeah.
conversations and getting into it, it's basically like this glass that needs to grow, right? Like or like whatever you'd call it. It's like people need to grow their capacity for to do this. And a lot of people, me included, when I entered, I thought it would be like a quick way that I can maybe survive, and like I thought it would maybe be that. But then I got in and I realized that it's just it's a long-term game and I have to really immerse myself and actually love it in order to really make it, because the people who really make these six figure, the composers who really makes these six figures in income are
Hmm.
usually people who really get nerdy, like really, really can get into the weeds, can really go deep into nuanced conversations about cables and stuff like that. Like it gets weird, but it's so cool at the same time, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, like there's a hip hop label that we represent called For the Win, and the
Okay,
guy that runs it, his name is Kenny Marone. Have you ever heard of Kenny Marone?
I think I have.
He's amazing. What I love about that guy is he's a hip hop encyclopedia. So like when we'll say like, oh, we need old school hip hop, for example, he'll be like, well, what kind of drum machines do you want me to use? I got the this, I got the that, like he'll get in there. He'll talk about synthesizers, he'll talk about samplers, he'll talk about all the stuff that I'm like, wow, this guy's so legit. He's been there, he's been making music, forever in the hip hop sphere, and he has all the gear, right? And so, I mean, I love teaming up with people like that because then I don't have to tell them what I need. I'll just say, yeah, like these artists, I'd be like, oh yeah, I know that guy, or like I know his brother, whatever,
Yeah.
and then it's like, sweet, okay, it's a shorthand, you know what I mean? Because at libraries, it's like, I think that getting the point across as to what you need can be difficult. So
Mm,
teaming with the people that are the nerds in whatever it is, it's just a lot easier working with people that know way more than I do about things like old school hip hop. You know what I mean? Because
exactly.
it's a relief. Because then the research, like I'll say three sentences to that guy, and sometimes it would take like pages of research and hours.
For you.
Maybe with other libraries that maybe don't have the same background.
Hmm. Or
So
for
I mean,
you to that like to that, it would take you hours to actually understand what you need. But when somebody can ask you, that's why they say that coaches, like having a coach, is really important because having a coach, they can dissect what you're thinking and saying in one question.
hmm.
And so something that would take you years to get to individually, there's a person who has done their research and have put their hours into working with people who are as fucked up as you to actually just like just shine a light on something that they've seen many times.
Hmm.
Um, and that's why these things are very important. And I'm starting to realize in my career where uh, um, it's sometimes it is very much worth to pay somebody a little bit of money in order to get that bigger picture. And
Sure.
in the end, it's so worth it because you end up soaking in all that. Plus, your journey gets so much shorter to what you want, so you can create more impact.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, never be afraid to ask. Like that's why I'm sure that you have a lot of musician friends too. So yeah, I mean, just asking your friends, even being like, hey, like, what do you think about old school hip hop? Like, what are some of your favorite drum machines, that you hear in these tracks? I mean, I think that, I don't know about you, but I'm on a lot of like Facebook groups with composers. And there's some really cool ones, and it's interesting to hear what people are talking about. I admit I'm more of a lurker because I haven't been writing a lot lately, but I love listening to what everyone is asking each other about, whether it be about the business or about music itself, or all these things, and there's so many groups out there that are community that want to help, that want to pitch in. So I mean, just like connecting yourself to all those groups, I think is important too.
Are there a few that come to mind?
Yeah, let me
Groups?
look. Yeah, yeah, there are.
Put it
Let's
up.
see if you're part of Production Music Publishers Discussion, endorsed by the
Oh,
PMA and the IPMG.
production
Are you
music. Say it again.
Production Music Publishers Discussion? And then in
Okay.
brackets, it's endorsed by PMA and IPMG.
Okay. That's good. That's one I've not been a part of.
Yeah, no, that one's pretty fun. And it's a lot of
Okay.
people that we work with, so, or
Okay.
and people can post anonymously too if it's something that's a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
If you're on the sync world, if you're in music supervision, or if you're, it's less for composers, but more people that are in the music supplier or the music
Yeah.
supervision role is sync this. You have to be
Okay.
approved. That's harder to get into. But like, I love like hearing music supervisors talk about stuff and what they need. That's always good
Yeah.
if you're on the pitching side, or or again the music supervision side.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a few. I mean, but again, it's like I really enjoy, people are really coming together. I mean, the internet's brought people together, and it's, and sync this is funny because a lot of times it's clearance questions like, does anyone have the remaining 13% of this copyright? It's interesting.
That's
I don't
hilarious.
know. I've learned so much, about
Yeah.
it's just from an observer perspective on music clearance, even, just like
Yeah.
how challenging that job is, so
Hmm.
I don't know, just being a part of these things is cool, and
What?
again,
Uh, Sorry.
I'm sorry, what are you going to say?
No, no. What? So I would love for you to get into a little bit of depth on clearance. Like, has there been a lot of challenges that you've been seeing in your career and also in your workspace?
Well, I will say, working for libraries like APM, or the one-stop libraries, we have really taken over the business for many reasons because man, being one-stop is
Mm,
everything. I mean, I don't know if you've heard the statistic, but more than half of the music in all television is production music now, and that was definitely not the case when I started. You know,
mm,
and the thing is, I'll get things, I'll get urgent requests from the mix stage where something fell out. Either they couldn't get the rights or the rights came in too high,
mm.
and they're like, I need to replace the song. I don't know what to do. I have a half hour. I'm
Wow.
like, okay, you know,
Damn.
and you
Damn.
can't. Clearance is takes a long time, you know. So the main broad strokes of clearing master and publishing rights is that you have to have the time and you have to have the money, you know. So the one stop solutions we've taken over because we're all easy to work with, which isn't to say that the majors aren't, but sometimes if you're dealing with like estates, if someone's passed away, that
Mm,
can take a long time. Rights in Italy are very hard to secure. There's certain territories that are harder than others, just culturally, um, so I mean, again, I think it's just so awesome that we work with catalogs that have secured these rights on a one-stop basis, and like I was talking about Fadeaway Records too, like
uh,
he really did a great job. He secured the rights and already cleared everything. He knew what to look for, like what the pitfalls are, like are there any co-writers. He's really done his homework because he worked in music clearance. So music clearance is complicated. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like hip hop is probably the hardest genre to clear because of all the sampling,
Yeah.
a lot of times, like
Yeah.
sampling, they don't even know what they're sampling,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So that's a
crazy.
tricky
It's crazy
genre.
that you're saying that because I talked to somebody from a very big independent publisher that you probably know, but he was telling me about how hard it is for him to get hip hop composers, and I'm like, what? Still? Like to me, it blows my mind. Just because maybe because I don't use samples and I kind of know my chops a little bit. But what he
Hmm.
says is that a lot of people that have a bit of a name come into production music, and I mean, they've never been bothered by it. So suddenly they start detecting samples, and suddenly these guys start like pulling out tracks for them because now they wrote it actually for Snoop, but actually submitted it for Sync, and like there's a lot of like just very very interesting things that I'm not even aware of, that even like you're telling me I didn't know that in Italy it's harder to clear songs. I didn't know
It
that.
can be. I've heard this from multiple supervisors. It can be, but we work with some really great Italian catalogs, archival ones, even where
Hmm.
they've worked with the estates ahead of time. Which is awesome.
Mm.
So yeah. I mean, it's funny just hearing the different stories. Like, and again, I learn these things. I go to all the Guild of Music Supervisors events and hearing
Oh.
everyone's stories. It's pretty fascinating. I don't know. But yeah, no, music clearance, especially in hip hop, is scary because I think a lot of times those artists don't really, they may not know any that using these samples isn't no good, right? And that you will get caught. It's not like everything is digitally fingerprinted now. You can't really get away
Right.
with it. You know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's so smart too. Like I feel like I've actually uploaded one of my tracks with UPM just to privately on SoundCloud, and they flagged it and told me you can't upload it even privately. It's like, whoa,
Good.
Jesus. Um,
Yeah. It's no
So
joke, right?
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, the stakes are too high because
yeah.
if you say you had something slip through the cracks and it got on like a Coca-Cola commercial, right? You'll never work with that agency again. If you mess up like that, it's like the door's closed and then the
Yeah,
word will get out. It's not good.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's very serious. But what's cool about APM, we get sampled by a lot of like major artists. Like we got
Mm.
something in a Black Keys song recently, and all kinds of huge, like Dr. Dre, like all these like huge,
Wow.
massive artists, Kendrick Lamar. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're known, like, what's great is that, a lot of these hip hop artists are definitely well versed in copyright and they come to us and they love our catalog. So,
Yeah.
it's pretty
Wow.
sweet. There
Full
was a song that
circle.
Eminem just did. Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. I don't know.
Which
So,
one?
like, it was,
I just listened to
I
his
will
newest album.
find it. Eminem sang on it, but it was, what's his name? Mama Gonna Knock You Out. What's his name?
I don't know.
Let's see.
Oh, so it's not his track. He's featured.
Okay, LL Cool J. So LL Cool
Okay.
J
Yeah. Very
LL Cool
very
J did a
OG.
song. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love him. It's
Yeah.
Murdergram Duh featuring Eminem.
Okay, I'll listen to it later. I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, so Murdergram and then like Duh, like two in French.
Yeah, do.
Amazing. Now, I mean, that song, like that sample is rad. So like, LL Cool J picked a good one
Yeah,
or
that's
whoever did the
sick.
beat. It's
Yeah, his
amazing.
producer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And
I can
yeah,
give
no,
you, I will give you, we've written articles on some of our sampling and I can
yeah.
give you a Spotify playlist of some of our best samples.
Hell yeah. I'll
Yeah, I
put that
mean,
in the show notes too for people to
yeah, yeah,
listen.
yeah. No, no, I'll dig that out. But we definitely have amazing stuff. I don't know. It floors me. I mean, that's when I kind of like it's hard to wrap your head around it. Like the hit makers of hip hop mainly and also rock. Like the Black Keys song was super cool. They worked with Beck on that song. Yeah, all the beautiful people. I think it's called. But that was a KPM song. That was even a newer song. So and Beck has sampled us before. So I'm a huge
That's
Beck
so
fan.
cool. That
Yeah.
that's what? That blows me away. That
Yeah,
blows me away for sure. I mean, it does make sense in a way, but it blows me away. Like because when people know their business, they know who knows their business. Like
yes,
to pull out a sample from the '80s or whatever of somebody who lives in like Oklahoma, and doesn't have social media is a challenge.
right.
But to come up to you and hear a cool thing and have it one stop and have an email answered in a few days is just like
Mhm.
it's a no brainer
Right.
to me.
Oh,
So
I mean, yeah, I mean, when we get client emails, I mean, we act fast on them. I mean, searches, usually get done in a few hours. It's amazing,
wow,
and
wow,
sometimes faster if people need it faster. So it's like, and there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, the rights are already cleared. So people know, as long as they know the price, we're good, and it's,
yeah,
it's very reasonable. The pricing is
yeah,
very reasonable. Like, they always say in TV, it's like, if you've ever heard of the song, you start at 30K all in and go way up from there.
yeah,
That's a lot of money. You have
yeah,
to have a good budget.
yeah,
And plus,
yeah.
the
So
rights now are all media excluding theatrical and television. It used to not be that way. So you used to be able to get it for a little less, but now they don't even play that way because there's streaming networks and everything else.
yeah, so the upfront fees are going down, but the quantity is actually going up. Of shows and of demand in general. So it's kind of like I feel like it's always a balancing act, right? Where uh, um where people are complaining, there's always somebody who's gaining,
Yes,
if that makes
it's
sense.
it's true. It's true. Yeah, and the business, everyone is getting smart. It's like, now that we have all these samples, and there's a website called Who Sampled,
Right.
so we can always see like people who've sampled in the past, like, even 30 years ago, whatever, right? But like, knowing that this is a thing, like we have a dedicated salesperson that works with sampling and people that want to sample. It's good to see what the music can be used in, whether it be
Mm,
new media or existing media or whatever, So I mean, people are getting pretty smart, I don't know. I think
mm,
it keeps it fun and it keeps it exciting,
mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, there's so much here. I feel like there's, well, I mean, I feel like, n- uh, I'd love for you if there's like another a, a little thing. I have so many things I want to ask you, but I feel like this is enough for this episode. Um, that being said, if you had to give composers and people who are getting into, plus again, who are trying to thrive in the space, a piece of advice, a last piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say, always work on your craft and always, write from the heart and make sure that you're keeping up with the newest sounds and staying current, and always evolve. Like, if there's something that sounds intriguing to you, just start writing that way, the sky's the limit. Just keep on going. And, a lot of these huge composers have library music. So don't be afraid to work with libraries, I mean, even John Carpenter just did something with BMG, It's like, it doesn't matter how big you are, library music is a great place to, especially when you're starting to work on stuff, but like, we have stuff from, all kinds of huge composers like John Barry, like who did all the 007 themes, and, I don't know. So it's like, get your music everywhere you can and just keep on going, because one thing leads to another. It's nice to have a body of work to choose from, and just keep on, writing great stuff. I guess
Yeah,
I don't know if that oversimplifies things, what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. It's just like, again, through social media, I've had these composer, like, I have some composer friends that I made 10, 15 years ago, and now they're doing humongous projects, right? I've seen it happen, um, and all those composers, again, I mean, I think they all started in library music,
yeah,
I mean, why else would they friend me? you
yeah,
know
yeah.
but yeah,
No
like
reason, no
Maxwell, I mean, all
reason.
these people, yeah, just amazing. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, and yeah, just keep on doing what you're doing and just love what you do, and
Yeah.
stay inspired.
Yeah, that's amazing. If people want to connect with you, where would be the best place to do that?
Yeah, it's funny. I started locking off my Facebook because I tried to keep. I got too many messages. I tried to
Mm,
keep that more family, right?
okay.
Instagram would be a good place,
Okay.
and it's just to have my first name underscore last name. Uh, is my handle, but yeah, that'd probably be the best place. Also, follow me on LinkedIn, because that stuff's like, I'll post like work stuff on there, but yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, and I'm around. I mean, if you're at an event, you'll probably see me, you know, like, especially if it's a Guild of Music Supervisors event, I'll most likely be there. Anything PMA related, I'll be there. I'm around. So yeah, I'm
I'm
approachable.
You are definitely approachable. I'm planning on coming to the guild next year because I feel like that's definitely a place that I want to be in for sure.
Yeah,
And also I'll get to meet you another time. Like I'll get to meet you face to face twice a year.
yeah. See, that's
Um,
great. I look
yeah.
forward to that.
So that's
No,
gonna.
I mean, in the Guild of Music Supervisors, it's fascinating. I mean, their day to day is very interesting, and it also gives me ideas. It's like, like what they need, how we
Mm,
can best service what they need. And as a composer, you could probably really, like hearing how they do like on camera, stuff like, and a lot of those like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, like that's a tough show that, Robin Erdang works on, but that's all like last minute, like quick live performance sync to camera. I don't know. It's just crazy.
wow.
I mean, so like hearing about like those projects and how they come together, I think is cool. But it definitely fuels like, the fire if you want to write for TV, especially, or movies, or even ads. Like, the education event they do once a year, the State of Music and Media event.
Mm,
It's usually in the fall. It happens in around September.
hmm.
And I love that event because, they bring supervisors across like, advertising, TV and film and trailers, so, you could just pick your poison or learn about
Mm.
all of them, you know,
Yeah.
and see where it takes you.
Amazing. Saris,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. This means the world, and I'm so happy that we got to do this again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Roy. It's so good to meet you again, and definitely if you make it overseas again to the US at any of these events, I'll probably see you there, hit me up.